On January 27, 1967, three astronauts climbed into the Apollo 1 command module for a routine launch pad test. None of them would leave it alive. Space exploration has always been sold to us as heroic, inspiring, a triumph of human ambition. But behind nearly every successful mission sits a long list of moments where everything almost went catastrophically wrong, and a shorter, darker list of moments where it did. Today, we're counting down 10 space missions that came terrifyingly close to disaster or didn't survive it at all. Number 1 might be the most unsettling story in the history of spaceflight. Let's get into it. That Apollo 1 test on the launch pad was supposed to be routine. No fuel in the rocket, no danger anyone expected. But inside the sealed command module, the astronauts were breathing a pure oxygen atmosphere at higher than normal pressure, an environment where even a small spark can become an inferno in seconds. A short circuit in the wiring ignited a fire that spread almost instantly through the cabin. In a pure oxygen environment, materials that would normally resist burning became explosively flammable. The hatch, designed to open inward, could not be opened in time. All three astronauts, Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee, died within seconds, on the ground, before their mission had even truly begun. NASA grounded the entire Apollo program for over a year, completely redesigning the capsule's hatch, wiring, and atmosphere. If you like videos that explore the true, harrowing history of space exploration, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from. Number 2. In April 1970, Apollo 13 was on its way to become the third crewed mission to land on the moon. Then, 2 days into the flight, an oxygen tank ruptured, and Mission Commander Jim Lovell uttered the words that would define the mission. "Houston, we've had a problem." The explosion crippled the spacecraft's main power, water, and oxygen supply, hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth. The crew was forced to abandon the moon landing entirely and use the lunar module, designed to support 2 people for 2 days, as a lifeboat for 3 people for 4 days. Temperatures inside dropped close to freezing. Carbon dioxide levels crept dangerously high, forcing an improvised fix using plastic bags, cardboard, and duct tape to keep the crew breathing. Every course correction had to work perfectly the first time, with no margin for error. Against odds that Mission Control genuinely believed were against survival, all 3 astronauts returned home safely, in what remains one of the most remarkable recoveries in the history of human spaceflight. Number 3. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger lifted off with 7 astronauts aboard, including Krista McAuliffe, who would have been the first teacher in space. 73 seconds later, the shuttle disintegrated in the sky, live on television, in front of millions of schoolchildren watching specifically because of her. The cause was a failed O-ring seal in one of the solid rocket boosters, a component that engineers had warned, the night before launch, could fail in cold temperatures. That morning was unusually cold for the Florida coast. The warnings were overruled. Hot gas escaped through the failed seal, triggering a structural failure that tore the shuttle apart. Investigators later determined the crew cabin likely survived the initial breakup intact, meaning at least some of the astronauts may have remained conscious during the fall. The disaster grounded the shuttle program for nearly 3 years and permanently changed how NASA weighed engineering warnings against schedule pressure. Number 4. In March 1966, astronauts Neil Armstrong and David Scott were conducting the first successful docking of 2 spacecraft in orbit, a critical test for the eventual moon missions. Shortly after docking, the combined spacecraft began to roll, uncontrollably, faster and faster. At first, they assumed the problem was with the unmanned target vehicle they had docked with. They undocked to investigate, and the rolling got dramatically worse. The problem wasn't the target, it was their own spacecraft. A thruster stuck firing continuously, spinning them at nearly 1 full rotation per second. At that speed, the astronauts risked losing consciousness or vision from the extreme spin, with no one able to help them from hundreds of miles below. Armstrong made a split-second decision to shut down the malfunctioning system and use the re-entry control thrusters instead, a solution that worked, but forced an immediate, unplanned end to the mission. It was a preview of the composure that would, 3 years later, guide him through the final, harrowing seconds of the first moon landing. Number 5. In June 1971, 3 Soviet cosmonauts completed a record-breaking 23 days aboard the Soyuz 1 space station, the longest spaceflight in history at that time. As their capsule began its descent back to Earth, Mission Control lost radio contact, which wasn't unusual during re-entry. When recovery teams opened the capsule, they found all 3 cosmonauts dead, still strapped into their seats, with no visible signs of trauma. A valve connecting their capsule to the descent module had been jolted open during a separation event, and in the vacuum of space, cabin air had vented out within seconds. The crew had no time to identify the problem or seal the leak. To this day, they remain the only humans to have died in space itself, rather than during launch or re-entry within the atmosphere. Every crewed spacecraft since has required pressure suits during these exact phases of flight. Number 6. On February 1st, 2003, the Space Shuttle Columbia was minutes from landing after a 16-day mission when it broke apart over Texas, killing all 7 astronauts aboard. The cause traced back to the moment of launch itself, over 2 weeks earlier. A piece of insulating foam had broken off the external fuel tank during liftoff and struck the shuttle's left wing, damaging its heat-resistant tiles. Engineers on the ground had noticed the strike and raised concerns, but management determined it wasn't significant enough to investigate further. During re-entry, superheated atmospheric gas breached the damaged wing, melting the internal structure from the inside. The shuttle lost control and disintegrated in the sky, debris scattering across multiple states. The disaster led to a 2.5-year grounding of the shuttle fleet. Number 7. In November 1969, Apollo 12 launched into a stormy Florida sky, and just 36 seconds after liftoff, disaster struck in the form of a massive lightning bolt, triggered by the rocket itself passing through the electrically charged clouds. The strike knocked out much of the spacecraft's electrical systems, causing warning lights across the command module to erupt in confusion. A second lightning strike hit moments later, compounding the chaos. A junior flight controller, remembering an obscure fuel cell switch from a training simulation months earlier, called out the exact fix needed to restore power. The crew executed it immediately, restoring critical systems just in time. Apollo 12 went on to complete a successful moon landing days after nearly ending in the very first minute of flight. Number 8. In June 1997, the Russian space station Mir was struck by an unmanned cargo spacecraft during a docking test conducted manually, without the station's usual automated systems. The impact tore a hole directly into one of Mir's modules, and the station began rapidly losing air into the vacuum of space. The 3-person crew had only minutes to act before the entire station's atmosphere vented completely. Working in near total darkness, disoriented and running out of time, the crew managed to locate and sever the cables connecting the damaged module to the rest of the station, sealing the breach just as pressure became critical. The punctured module remained sealed off and unusable for the rest of Mir's operational life. Number 9. On July 11, 1979, NASA's first space station, Skylab, was scheduled to fall back to Earth after years in orbit, its decaying trajectory no longer sustainable. The problem was that nobody could precisely predict where the 77-ton station would actually land. Solar activity had heated and expanded Earth's atmosphere more than expected, accelerating Skylab's decay faster than engineers had planned for. As the re-entry date approached, growing public anxiety spread across the globe, with newspapers publishing potential impact zones spanning entire countries. NASA attempted to steer the tumbling station using its remaining thrusters, adjusting its orientation to influence where debris might fall. When Skylab finally broke apart during re-entry, large fragments scattered across the Indian Ocean and rural Western Australia, remarkably missing populated areas. An Australian town later humorously fined NASA for littering, a fine that a radio host eventually paid on the agency's behalf, decades after the fact. Number 10. And that brings us to the story that started this list. Every astronaut who has ever left Earth's atmosphere has done so knowing, explicitly, that the vehicle carrying them could fail in ways no simulation fully prepares you for. Rockets are, at their core, controlled explosions, precisely timed to produce thrust instead of destruction. Every launch asks an enormous number of components to perform flawlessly, simultaneously, under extreme heat, pressure, and vibration. Despite this, the response to nearly every disaster in spaceflight history has been the same: investigate, redesign, and fly again. Apollo 1's fire led directly to the hatch that saved future crews. Challenger and Columbia's losses led to redesigned boosters and stricter safety reviews. Space exploration has never been safe. It has only ever been worth the risk to the people willing to sit on top of the rocket anyway. If these stories gave you a new appreciation for what astronauts actually risk, let me know which mission shocked you the most in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the true, harrowing history of spaceflight, subscribe, because there's a lot more where this came from. See you in the next one.